Hello, I'm Zubul Bailey, Artistic Director of Northwest Bachfest, and it's a pleasure to be with you in the Innovia Foundation's annual meeting. This year's meeting is titled, This Is Why, and it really resonates with me. This is why implies motivated involvement. Motivated involvement is why Northwest Bachfest works to contribute to the health, well-being, and vibrancy of this community through musical performance. Similar to Innovia's mission, Northwest Bachfest believes that music serves best when it is offered with a generous heart. Music can offer a sense of wonder, delight, inspiration, and comfort. We offer inspirational educational events in schools from kindergarten to college. So while Northwest Bachfest takes great pride in bringing some of the world's most highly regarded musicians to the concert settings for which we are known, we also strive to make beautiful, timeless music widely accessible throughout the entire community. Motivated involvement. This is why, as the Innovia Foundation does, Bachfest keeps developing innovative ways to continue our goals. We are indeed most grateful for the generous support from the community we serve, and we are continually finding new ways to offer music, even with the pandemic's restrictions. And now it's with tremendous pleasure to introduce CEO of Innovia Foundation, Shelley O'Quinn.
Thank you, Zul, for your beautiful performance and for your support of Northwest Bachfest. It is truly an honor to have you here in Spokane with us today and in support of Innovia Foundation as well.
Thank you.
Many of our stories today will focus on youth, food insecurity, and healthy families. But you've given us a wonderful reminder that music and art are inspiration for the soul. Thank you for your beautiful performance for our community, for our donors, and for the volunteers of Innovia Foundation. It's truly a pleasure to have you with us.
Means the world. Thank you, Shelley.
Good afternoon, and welcome to our live virtual annual reception. We wish more than anything that we could be together in person with you today. But that is not the world we are currently living in. So thank you for joining us for yet one more virtual event. Who would have known a year ago, when we last gathered, how much our world would change, or how much our region would have to endure? And yet, it is in these challenging times that we have witnessed our communities and friends come together to support one another in some incredible ways. And this is why we are here today, to celebrate, to highlight the good despite the challenges and hardships. Thank you for joining us. My name is Shelley O'Quinn, and I am CEO of Innovia Foundation.
And I'm Aaron McMurray, Chief Strategy Officer. We are privileged and excited to welcome you to our virtual annual reception for donors, supporters, and region-wide partners of Innovia Foundation.
This is our annual event to celebrate the impact and generosity of donors and community partners and the tremendous work that is happening across our 20-county region.
As the outbreak of the virus now stretches into its 9th month, Many of us may feel discouraged and frankly frustrated by the challenges, suffering, and inconvenience the outbreak has brought to our lives. This is why we believe that our region needs hope and encouragement now more than ever. So in this season of Thanksgiving, we at Innovia have so much to be thankful for.
During our time together today, you will notice that our theme for the afternoon, This Is Why, is woven through each of the stories we will tell, because the events of this past year provide daily reminders of why we do what we do as your community foundation. It would be easy to jump right into our COVID response stories, since everywhere we turn, that is our life right now. But we don't want to forget that generous donors have been investing in nonprofits and transforming lives and communities across our region for over 45 years.
So often we think it's the large mega million gifts that have a transformational impact on community. But we believe generosity comes in many forms, from simple acts of kindness to community-wide efforts. Generosity has a way of igniting more generosity.
This is why our first story today is about the generosity of a retired Spokane Public Schools teacher whose matching gift challenge is inspiring community-wide support to provide STEM education opportunities for students at Rogers High School. We'll be right back with you after you enjoy this inspirational story of generosity.
It's just a different world. It's unlikely you're going to leave high school and be able to walk into some job that will pay you a living wage for the rest of your life. And definitely the STEM fields are very attractive to students right now because there is a good wage there. It's innovative and constantly changing, which to a lot of students is really attractive as well.
You have a student that learns some science, and then they'll go to math class, and then they learn some math, and then they maybe go to a computer class and learn computers. Well, in STEM, they have to put those things together, and those students then need to apply those concepts to a project. So it's really an application of things rather than just a kid learning something and taking a test.
With the Rogers STEM program, I was specifically interested in that class because I knew a lot of the sciences in that class would be more applicable to real life.
Spokane has cried out and said, we need good people coming into those programs and those careers, really give kids opportunities that they can take forward and change their lives forever.
I met a donor who wanted to make a difference as a retired educator for students. The opportunity gap that she found that could be filled at Rogers are students of color, students who come from an impoverished background, students whose parents never went to college. So this donor started this fund for Rogers STEM Spirit Fund, and it provides about $10,000 a year to the school to use at their discretion.
The good thing about the grant is we can get some materials, we can get some tools for kids to use that they wouldn't have otherwise. So when they leave Rogers and they go to Central Washington or UW, all of a sudden what they're seeing there are the things they see in the high school, so they don't feel like they're out of place.
I spend a lot of time teaching kids 3D modeling, and to actually see a design of their own come to fruition, they can spin it around in the computer, and then they can download that into a 3D printer and actually make something that they designed and that they can go and use.
This has been life-changing for our kids to have those opportunities.
Those skills that you learn in those classes are really universal and can be applied to many different fields.
When you come across a new project and you've hit a wall, coming over that wall is always the best part, because then we're moving forward. That's what makes it fun to me.
And they come back and say, Kaplan, thank you so much for having these programs. I can do stuff that half the other kids can't. I'm headed to dentistry school. I'm headed to be an RN. I'm top in my class because of it.
Go Huskies.
I was with Miss Kaplan all 4 years of high school.
She applied to Grand Canyon University because they had a forensics program. When she got down there, they said, well, you're a freshman, but you've had all these classes already. We're going to allow you to take a junior class in forensics. And it's just been a thrill to watch that dream continue on with her.
It's not just that they gave us money, it's that they've been really passionate about how this money is used. They have remained close, they tour the labs, they talk to students, and are even actively pursuing other donors to contribute as well.
She said, we need more. So she gave another $110,000 and said, I want to challenge the community.
Not only is she giving more students the opportunities to take these classes, she's giving them more opportunities to better themselves and to be successful.
You can talk to students and you can say, hey, there's someone out there that really believes in you guys. You know, they hear it about teachers. They see teachers every single day. We tell them we believe in them. We do everything we can to support them. But all of a sudden, there's somebody in the community that's writing a pretty good sized check because they want them to be successful. It really gives those kids confidence.
The hardest thing to overcome was the stigma, like Rogers students are bad students. Despite all that, made it to UW and am now a sophomore in the aerospace program.
With this kind of money, we're going to see some great things come out of this in the future.
What a great story. It's so inspiring to see the impact our anonymous donor is having on the lives of so many students at Rogers High School. And this one retired teacher is igniting generosity to have even greater impact. Today, over $20,000 have been committed to meet the matching challenge to support the Rogers STEM program.
For nearly 50 years, donors like this have empowered and inspired generosity and positive change in the lives of people and communities around our region. This is why we love the work we do. As your community foundation, we've had a front row seat to see that generosity in action and to partner with people and communities to empower and support their charitable interests.
And it all starts with community and the many volunteers who give so much of their time and talent to the places that they live, work, and love. Like any great organization, Innovia Foundation could not do what we do without our incredible board and community volunteers. You all know that we serve a vast region, 20 counties, 2 states, 40,000 square miles, and 1 million people. There is no way we could do our work and live up to our commitment to being in community and knowing community without actually being directly connected. This is why, in January of this year, we launched 10 new leadership councils, bringing our total number of volunteers for the foundation to over 300.
Our leadership councils are made up of representatives from local businesses, nonprofits, grassroots organizations, and civic partners. To formally kick off our new way of working with communities and volunteers, we held our first annual Community Leadership Summit the first week of March. Little did we know at that time what would happen 2 weeks later, but it was through that incredible summit that the foundation was set for everything we've been able to accomplish this year.
On March 2nd, we brought together over 220 of our volunteers and community partners from around the region for 2 packed days of incredible speakers, engaging conversations, and regional relationship building.
We discussed the economic trends in our region and how the coming years will bring both opportunities and risks for communities in Eastern Washington and North Idaho.
We explored the vital role that tribal communities play as cultural and economic assets in our region. Many of you may not know that we have 6 tribes within our 20-county service area.
We were inspired to think about rural economic vitality and closing the divide in regions like ours between rural and urban communities.
We were inspired to dream big by the 5% transfer of wealth opportunity, to transform our communities by retaining and reinvesting back into the communities we live in and love.
One of our speakers addressed the critical importance of education in fueling the economic engine of our region. And another both inspired and warned us about future trends and strategies to ensure that every community flourishes, regardless of what the future brings. Little did we know how timely Doug Griffith's talk would be.
And of course, our beloved speaker from Buffalo, Sam Radford, explored the bold and courageous promise of the Say Yes to Education initiative to ensure that every child in our region has the opportunity to go to college and the support to get there. Such a powerful and inspiring message from Sam. Perhaps most importantly, during the Leadership Summit, our leadership councils came together, forging relationships over those 2 days, which would set the stage for work we had no idea would be coming 2 weeks later. To help tell the next part of our story, we're joined in studio by Innovia Foundation's board chair, Bob Larson. Bob, welcome.
Thank you, Shelley. I couldn't agree more. The Leadership Summit was one of the best conferences I've ever attended. The Innovia Foundation board has been among the most meaningful, inspirational, and fulfilling boards I've ever served on. And the Leadership Summit was just the icing on the cake. It was a proud moment to reflect on everything Innovia has accomplished. As chair of the Innovia board, I want to express the board's gratitude to the Innovia Foundation staff for the leadership you provide in our community and in our region. We need to celebrate all that has come out of the Leadership Summit and our leadership councils. I also want to echo our gratitude for the generosity of Innovia's donors. They make everything possible that we are celebrating today. And on behalf of the board, I want to thank our sponsors for their generosity in supporting today's event. We could not achieve our mission and vision as your community foundation without the generosity of our sponsors and donors and the partnership of so many leaders across our region.
Thank you, Bob, for your incredible leadership. We really appreciate it. We are so privileged to have an amazing group of men and women representing communities across our region who give of their time and talent to serve and represent all of you on the Innovia Foundation board. Their leadership, commitment, and passion lay the groundwork for all that we do. Thank you, Innovia board members. And since Bob mentioned our incredible sponsors who have made today possible, let's take time to recognize them now, as every great video has a commercial break. Aaron?
Thanks, Shelley. Our platinum sponsor today is Merrill Lynch, made possible by the generosity of our board chair, Bob Larson, and board emeriti, Janice Baldwin, as well as local Merrill Lynch advisors, Darren Hand and Steve Harmon. Our gold sponsor is Ager Consulting, made possible by the generosity of Jean Ager and Jan Ager Carroll. Our silver sponsors, RBC Wealth Management, made possible by Kyle Weir, and Kershaw's Office Supply. Thank you to Kershaw's owners Diane and Damian Mangano. And finally, we have two in-kind sponsors to thank. KHQ, which provided video footage at our Leadership Summit, which is also used in our video storytelling today. And also a huge thank you to Northwest Bach Festival for making it possible for Zool Bailey to be live in studio with us today. And finally, we want to give a huge shout out to Hamilton Studio and Klunt Hosmer Design, who have been our partners and gone above and beyond to help make today a success. Thank you again to these generous sponsors.
Thank you, Aaron. And I also want to echo my deepest gratitude to our sponsors for your support. We could not do this without you. Now, getting back to our Leadership Summit. Little did we know that the summit, which launched our leadership councils, would prove to be so critical in positioning us to serve our region. The shared vision and trusted relationships created during those 2 days allowed us to come back together 2 weeks later when our region was shut down by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Over the last 9 months, our volunteers have brought the voice of their communities to our work. They've helped us identify community priorities and have lifted up areas of greatest need.
And while COVID may have separated us, it has also brought us together. We have connected more with new friends and partners as we've all figured out how to live into this new Zoom world. And while we may now be experiencing Zoom fatigue, one of the positives of COVID is that we are better connected as a region despite our vast geography.
I actually liked Zoom until I experienced my first 8-hour Zoom day. But don't take all of this from us. We want you to hear from some of these incredible Leadership Council members. We're going now to the places and faces across North Idaho and Eastern Washington that have made this work possible.
This is why I am proud to be one of the many now serving on Innovia's leadership councils throughout its 20-county region in Eastern Washington and North Idaho. Having these community representatives allows Innovia to better listen and understand what communities need and to strategically design their philanthropic efforts to better meet those needs in fundamentally impactful and lasting ways.
Our local leadership council in Region 5 was able to move quickly and identify the immediate needs of our small community of Pomeroy. We received funding for children without computers to have Chromebooks, for our food bank to have additional supplies, and to help people who lost their jobs suddenly due to COVID to be able to make ends meet.
We've been able to support our senior citizens through the Senior Center, the City of Weippe, the Pierce Community Center, and the Clearwater County Ambulance District.
I'm at the East Benoit Council on Aging. It's a volunteer organization that prepare and serve and deliver 60 meals per day to our homebound seniors. At the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, their previous mixer quit working. And thanks to the quick leadership of the Innovia Foundation, they were able to replace the previous mixer and had money in their hands within 7 days.
We have a new business owner that received a grant, and he's working on the inside of this building, and it's going to be called Main Street Marketplace and plans to open in November.
Innovia takes a long-term perspective in much of its benevolence efforts, seeking to make real change and lasting impact in the lives that it's trying to help through its donations and its work in our community.
The impact that it's had, especially in the last 6 to 8 months, with helping out our small community with food insecurity help for some of our small businesses and our local economic development councils. This is why I think it's very, very important to establish these leadership councils in these rural areas.
I'm so thankful for all that Innovia has done to support our small town during the hard times of COVID-19. They've given us money for extra support for our local schools and our food banks. This is why I love what Innovia does for small towns.
Hi, I'm Paul Kimmel with Avista and serve on the Innovia Regional Advisory Committee. Thank you, Innovia, for being here in Malden to help this community recover.
In March of this year, our foundation turned its focus to assisting our hospital in fundraising for COVID-19 relief. And through a very generous matching donation from Innovia Foundation, we were able to contribute an additional $80,000 to this fund. I can't speak highly enough of the Innovia Foundation, its commitment to our region, and its mission of being a truly involved community partner.
I love that. Some of my favorite people, and each of these leaders you just heard from, represent a dozen others in their communities who have all come together to provide a voice for the important issues in the communities we serve.
Some of those issues emerged because of the outbreak of COVID-19, and leadership councils were crucial in identifying nonprofits on the front lines who were best positioned to meet the needs of people who were most disproportionately impacted.
But most of these challenges already existed in our communities, and the outbreak of the virus merely exposed them and made them worse. In both cases, our leadership councils were vital in helping us see and elevate those crucial needs and priorities.
One example of this is the issue of food security. We already knew that access to healthy food has been an issue in our region, but the following video demonstrates how communities have come together to meet this important need.
It's a passion of mine to make sure that children have food. The price of water and everything has increased so much in Endicott that people can't afford.
Food insecurity would be not knowing if that next meal is there, or is it the type of meal that you're able to sustain your health with. So that looks like skipping your own meals so that your family can eat.
I've worked a lot of years in schools, and when you see kids tired and sleeping because they haven't had enough food, that affects their learning. So food is essential for good learning, and it's the way for them to grow and develop their own path.
foundation wants to be more than just a grant maker, right? It's important that the work that happens in the community is really community directed. We want to look at how strategies are helping address food insecurity.
We have programs in housing solutions and community food. So we try to move individuals and communities to this positive future, and we really want communities and households to decide what that future looks like for themselves.
We have 50 families coming to the food bank. So the food bank falls in is really super important for them to take care of a lot of their needs, because it's right at the end of the month is when we give our food out, and they don't have a paycheck until after the first of the month. And I try to get enough stuff so kids that cannot afford lunches have something to eat.
I really believe that we already have enough of everything we need. It's just a matter of getting it to the right people at the right time.
I get telephone calls for families and stuff that say, hey Dave, you got some milk, you got cereal, you got some potatoes and onions or something? Well, we need some food. And I said, well, you meet me at the food bank then, I'll open it up and we'll get you what you need. That's
worked well.
24/7.
The foundation can really be at the center, I think, and help organizations design effective strategies and then implement those out and be able to achieve the kind of dreams that they see for their community.
I imagine people coming here from other places to learn how this community figured out how to make sure that there's enough food for everyone and bringing that to wherever they live.
I love the people. They're the nicest people, and the whole community is warm and friendly and accepting. And I see a lot of people wanting to support each other within the community. We all have to work as a team, because nothing happens if we don't work together.
I love that closing line. We cannot do any of this work alone. It's together with committed community volunteers like David and Judy and generous donors that we're able to serve those in need in our communities.
It is now time in our program to switch gears a bit. Through the years, we have had the privilege of being inspired and challenged by great thought leaders in philanthropy. One of those inspirational leaders is the CEO of the Lincoln Center in Manhattan and author of New Power, an inspirational book about the power of generosity to transform communities. But he is perhaps most well known by all of us locally as the co-founder of the global Giving Tuesday movement. I am so pleased to welcome as our keynote speaker today, Mr. Henry Timms.
Hi, I'm Henry Timms, and I am so honored to be with you today virtually for This Is Why, to celebrate the amazing work of your community and the contribution of the Innovia Foundation and all the people tied to it. And my topic today is the new power of generosity, two things I spent some time thinking about. And I want to start by talking about the new power, what that is and what it means to all of us, and then expand into what that really means for generosity and for the work that you're doing. So let's start with this game. I imagine that many of you have wasted hours of your life back in the day on this game. For the younger people watching, this game is called Tetris. I think it's having a resurgence recently, but it was the biggest game of the 20th century. And the way Tetris worked, in many ways represented how the world worked. It was a top-down game. Somebody else set the rules. These blocks would fall down upon our heads, and our only job was to make them fit into neat lines again and again and again until eventually we would collapse under the pressure of the game. It was a Tetris world. It was not one where many people had much agency. We played our part. And think how different that is to this world. So you may recognize this clock tower. This is a game called Minecraft, and it is the most popular game of the 21st century. And interestingly, both with Tetris and with Minecraft, they are both block-based games. They're both made with blocks, but the way that they operate is very different. So the way that Minecraft works is there aren't a set of rules set by somebody else. It's not a single player game, it's a multi-player game. And there's no prescription, it's not a top-down game, it's literally a bottom-up game. It is built by people all around the world who come together to create games together in a collaborative, more inclusive and more creative way. And actually during this lockdown period in Spokane, there's been a Minecraft server set up specifically to bring together people around community to think about how during this period where people are stuck indoors, we can create more together and collaborate more together. So think just for a moment about growing up playing either of those games. You had a Tetris childhood, right? You stayed in the lanes, you had a limited role to play, you waited for the blocks to fall and made them fit into lines, or you had a Minecraft childhood. You were growing up in a world where you were being encouraged to put your own stamp on things. You expected not to play by someone else's rules, but to build worlds in your own image. And when we think about that, that's a metaphor. Those two different ways of operating is a metaphor for the work I've done with my colleague Jeremy Hyamans around how power is shifting. So the argument we've made is that what's really changing in the world today is not technology per se, but actually power. The way in which power flows and the way in which you operate power. And we are leaving a world, a kind of Tetris world, where old power was the name of the game, right? Power was held by few. It tended to download onto people. It was very top down. It tended to be quite leader driven about kind of the dynamic individuals, and it tended to be quite closed up, right? So if you think about our businesses, our social institutions, our governments, our religions, they all operated with the old power suite of tools in their mind. And that is very different to what we are seeing emerging in this world where we are all so much more connected, which we think of as the new power world. And in the new power world, in the Minecraft mindset, it's a very different way that power operates. Power is actually made by many, not held by few. It's not about how you download your view onto the world, but how you can encourage the upload of other people. It's about peers, it's about sharing, it's about a greater sense of openness. So just think for a moment to draw some examples of this new power at work. Think about the social movements which have transformed our age, the Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, Extinction Rebellion. They're all operating not in an old power way because the General Secretary sends out a memo and the local chapters make sure it all happens. They are distributed, decentralized networks where everyone comes together and plays their part in a much more collaborative, open and engaging kind of a way. Think too about some of the political phenomena we've seen around the world. Time and time again, you will see politicians from either side of the aisle come to power because they've worked out how to supercharge their new power support. It's true of Barack Obama, it's true of Donald Trump, it's true of Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil. All around the world, we're seeing these figures come along who can work out how to unleash the new power of participation to supercharge their work. And of course, it's true in business. If you look around the businesses which have kind of become the standout stories of our age, they're almost all businesses built on new power, built on this appetite for participation. So think about a Google, Facebook, Uber, Airbnb. All of these platforms are designed to take advantage of the need, the increasing need that we all have to participate, and the increasing sense we all have that we ought to be participating, that the world is something we ought to be shaping, not simply consuming. And that's really started to shift how we think about values. So as we think about this work of new power and old power, what's begun to happen is there have been these quite identifiable mindsets, different ways of thinking about how the world should work that are shaping all of us. So in the old power world, we cared most about things like confidentiality, like managerialism, like expertise, like long-term affiliation. Think about, as an example, how a lot of our local institutions ran, our Lions Club, our churches, our synagogues. They worked on a sense of you had a limited role to play, you lived within the rhythms of these institutions, they went on for years and years and years, and you participated in a way that was constant, but not especially rewarding. And that's being challenged by the rise of this new power mindset, this group of people all around the world now who expect more transparency, who expect greater collaboration, who have this sense of this maker culture, that they aren't waiting for experts to tell them what to do, but instead they want to put their own hands on the world and start to think about how they can play a role, and a much greater sense of informal decision making, much more about self-organization rather than the few at the center making decisions for the many. And just to take a beat on this slide, if you think about the strategic direction of the Innovia Foundation, a commitment to inclusion, a commitment to collaboration, a commitment to innovation. These are all things that cannot be fostered if a small group of people are centrally holding all of the power and releasing it at moments of their choosing. They will only work if people are engaging and in listening to communities and making space for communities, and in the way that you celebrate today the work that you do to make space for people to tell their stories. We often say this in the office, getting people to think about how that they can be a part of your mission on their terms, right? I think that's such an important idea for institutions. We used to think about how we can get people to play a part in our mission on our terms. But in the new power world for institutions, one of the great challenges is how do we get people to play a part in our mission on their terms? And so many of the stories that we celebrate today are about exactly that idea, that institutions are challenging themselves to transform, to be more nimble, to be more agile, and to bring some of these new power values to bear. But wait, I do not want you thinking that my argument to you today is new power is good, old power is bad. In fact, it is particularly important in this moment that organizations and communities like the one we celebrate today, like yours, recognize that actually many of the things that we celebrated in the old power world, which are under threat, could not be more important today. And in fact, the right blend for any organization is how do we have enough old power and enough new power so as we can use both when the world needs us to. And there's no more compelling example of that, of course, than the debate we're having right now around, or at least the debate we are hopefully going to have in 21 around vaccines. So if you think back a year or so, the World Health Organization laid out their 10 biggest challenges to the world, the 10 biggest risks that they saw. And 2 of those risks are particularly pertinent today. One was a global pandemic. The other one was vaccine hesitancy, the idea that people all around the world were not anti-vaxxers, but actually would just think twice, would need some convincing if a vaccine needed to be taken. And if you think about this argument I've made to you around old power and new power, and think about the coming debate around vaccination, the coming challenge of getting billions of people to vaccinate, if this is taken in an old power way, we are going to come up short, right? If a small number of experts insist that they know the truth and they have the science and they have the peer information and they've got 3 degrees and therefore everybody ought to listen to them, we've seen that tactic fail time and time again. But they're right. We need that expertise, we need that knowledge, we need that data, we need that science. But the great challenge is to blend the old power of expertise with a much more compelling way of spreading a message. One of the things the anti-vax community does particularly well is actually create community around their narrative. It's a very powerful, it's a very rewarding, it's a very positive community to be a part of because they've worked out how they can give people bigger roles to play in spreading their message. So as we think about the stakes around new power, particularly in the year ahead, one of the great, I guess the great kind of defining themes of 2020 has been this remarkable spread of different things, right? We've seen this spread of misinformation, we've seen the spread of hate, we've seen the spread of fires, we've seen things spread in so many unexpected and damaging ways. And so one of the really interesting questions for all of us going forward is the positive spreads. What are those things that we can spread in positive ways that can start to counteract some of the challenges we see in our world? And that takes me to generosity. So I think one of the reasons I was so pleased to be a part of this today was I think your central belief around generosity is so right, that actually there is nothing more powerful in transforming communities than fostering a sense of generosity towards others. And for our world today, which faces so many challenges, of course, we need more than ever people to be able to take a pause, to find more in themselves and to find more in others. So I wanted to kind of think today about, if we were thinking about a generosity perspective, what does New Power mean for generosity, for those looking to foster generosity in the world, to transform lives, to transform communities? How do we do that in more meaningful ways? And I wanted to share 3 conclusions I had on that work. The first is that increasingly we are all called to put our missions over our brands. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is we as institutions, we as leaders, often get stuck on the idea that the most important thing is credit, right? That we make sure that we get our logo in the right place, that we make sure that our chief executive gets the limelight, that we make sure that the change that we make in the world reflects well on us. It's an important idea, and not one I discount, right? It's very important that people do that work. It's very important that people and organizations raise the funds they need to raise. Having said all that, if we take up all the space ourselves, we leave very little space for others. It's really important, I think, as we think about generosity and change, that we create movements that are generous in how they're designed, so other people can own them as much as us. And of course, one of the projects I've been working on now for almost a decade is Giving Tuesday. And when we launched Giving Tuesday, I was working at the 92nd Street Y, which is a New York institution. And I remember we had we were talking about it internally, and I was saying, look, we've got this idea, it's going to be Black Friday, and then there's Cyber Monday, and then we'll do Giving Tuesday, and it will be this day of generosity. And one of my board members said, sounds great, but where's the 92nd Street Y logo going to go? And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, is it going to go between the Giving and the Tuesday? And I said, no, we're not going to put our logo on it. Because if we put our logo on it, if we stamp it with our brand, then nobody else will stamp it with theirs. No one else will be able to co-own a good New Power principle, co-own the work that we're doing. And so with Giving Tuesday, which of course we've been so inspired by the Innovia Foundation and the way that you have created a community around Giving Tuesday in exactly this way, which is putting the mission over the brand, which is fostering the community to allow greater generosity, but taking a back seat in that work. What we've seen with Giving Tuesday, and you can see here these logos, is as it's moved around the world, other people have taken the idea and made it culturally relevant to them. What's been so interesting about Giving Tuesday is we've never had any brand guidelines. No one ever said you have to do a heart. No one ever said you have to do it in a certain way. But just the natural culture of movement as it's moved around the world, anytime people have joined in, as you can see here, they've taken this central motif of the heart and put their own spin on it. And I think that's such a powerful metaphor for the way in which generosity can spread. Because generosity, of course, isn't just being kind to people, it's also trusting people. It's also making sure that you're giving them the gift of your trust, that you don't expect them to do the wrong thing, but you give them that great gift of expecting them to do the right thing. Conclusion number 2 when it comes to generosity is one about leadership. And I think we in the social sector often we celebrate the superstars, right? The dynamic individuals whose personal charisma transform the moment, and because of their own insight, the world is changed. And of course, many in that space have done good work, but increasingly in the New Power world, the superstars are not doing as well as the superconductors. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is those individuals who are not shining, taking up the light, right, having all the light shine on them, but those individuals who are good at conducting the light of others, that collaborative ethos that is baked into the work of the Innovia Foundation. It's exactly that kind of work which from a leadership perspective is working in the New Power world. It's those people who are working out how to build these coalitions, these communities, these broader engaging groups that are actually standing out. And I was very pleased to learn about work like the Laurie Vasey Fund as such a good example of the kind of superconductor leadership that I think is really beginning to make a big difference in our world today. There's a great line in Sherlock Holmes, in the Dr. Watson Sherlock Holmes book by Arthur Conan Doyle. And Dr. Watson is talking to Sherlock Holmes, and Holmes says to Watson, and he means this as an insult, he says, Watson, you are not luminous, but from time to time you are a conductor of light. And I think that insult is actually a great compliment now. That those individuals who are trying not to be luminous, but trying to be a conductor of light, are making enormous change in the world. And then conclusion number 3, that pulses are greater than spikes when it comes to generosity. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, we've all been drawn into a world of spikes, right? The algorithms that shape our lives, the digital platforms we spend our time on, they are designed to grab our attention, to flash in our faces, to keep us on the platform for as long as we can, by provoking, by offering us things that outrage us, by offering us things that validate us, but to keep us tracked as we move into their world. And the world has reacted to this, right? So we think about our politics, we think about our entertainment environment, we think about our media, and the world has got very spiky very quickly, right? We are paying great attention to what's trending, to what's flaring, to what everybody's talking about. And I think what's happened with that is we've become so focused on the spiky world that we've lost sense of the pulse. And what I mean by the pulse is we've lost sense of, or we've certainly stopped paying attention to, those leaders and individuals who are doing things day after day, week after week, month after month, that are not particularly spiky. They're never trending, they're not getting all the news coverage, they're not the thing that everyone is outraged about. They're just good people doing good work time and time again. And I think that world of pulses is actually proving much more effective than people think. It doesn't get as much attention, but as you think about the generosity of changing the world, so much of that is actually long and hard work. So much of that generosity is nurtured by people, and we celebrate those people today with you. Those individuals who aren't about the single moment, but are about that constant civic pulse and maintaining that constant civic pulse that ultimately makes all of us healthier and all of us happier. So let me say to you today, I'm so honored to have the chance to speak to you today. I wish it would be in person. I hope that will be possible next year. I really want to salute the work of this community. The work you've done with Giving Tuesday has been remarkable. The work you have done to increase the generosity of your community during a pandemic is something which has been so inspiring. And today, as you take a pause to celebrate, I hope you'll all look back on what has been such a tough year for so many and recognize that the generosity you've offered this year will be more meaningful than any year in recent memory. That contribution really stacks up this year. And as we all bolster ourselves for a cold, hard winter and for a tough year ahead, we take great heart by the sparks of generosity that have been nurtured by this community. I congratulate all of you. I'm sorry not to be there with you. Thank you for all you do. Here is to generosity.
Thank you, Henry, for those inspiring words and for reminding us of the power of generosity to transform lives and communities. From simple acts of kindness to transformational gifts, we know that every single one of us has the opportunity to make an impact on the lives of those around us.
Our last story captures this region-wide impact so perfectly. As we shared at the outset, our region has been through so much. Yet the generosity we saw from donors and community partners, both regional and statewide, was incredible. Through those relationships, we've raised over $3 million to address immediate response and recovery for the COVID-19 pandemic.
As you have heard us say, we cannot do this work alone. It's truly through the power of partnership and community that we are able to do what we do every day. We want to take a moment to recognize some key partners who are with us every step of the way this year. In the earliest days of the pandemic, we knew that we had to respond both quickly and united. Innovia, along with our friends and partners at United Way of Spokane County, Empire Health Foundation, Avista Foundation, and so many more, stood up the COVID-19 Response and Recovery Funds. These funds support nonprofits meeting the needs of folks across our region who are vulnerable and disproportionately impacted by the spread of the virus and the subsequent shutdowns.
We've listed on the screens the numerous funders and partners who came together to support our communities. This collaborative and coordinated work allowed all of us to increase our capacity to serve our communities, and we believe has forever changed how we will work together going forward. A big thank you to each of these incredible organizations and their teams.
We would never have been able to distribute the dollars raised out to our local communities without the support of our leadership councils and local volunteers. Throughout Eastern Washington and North Idaho, our local leadership councils guided our grant making. Their knowledge of their communities, their connectedness, ensured that every dollar that went out the door met a local need. These were not decisions being made in a silo from our office in Spokane.
And even in Spokane County, we brought together an advisory group of diverse community leaders, advising on grants to grassroots, person of color led and person of color serving organizations, addressing the needs of the most vulnerable in our region hardest hit by the outbreak.
Regionally, we funded hotspots to ensure students had Wi-Fi up in Ferry County, and Chromebooks for students in Garfield County to have the technology they need to study and learn from home.
We funded $779,000 to 138 nonprofits around our region to fight food insecurity. Many of these grants went to small food banks and food pantries in rural communities.
And we gave grants to grassroots nonprofits addressing domestic violence, child abuse, and mental health, because we know these issues have been made worse by the pandemic.
Without our connection to local community, without our leadership councils, we never could have made the impact that we have. We are truly humbled by the generosity, friendship, and collaboration with leaders and partners across our region.
Since early April, we have granted out over $15 million to nonprofits, communities, and small businesses to support relief, response, and recovery efforts in our region. But as we always say, these numbers do not matter if we are not having a positive impact on people's lives. This is why our last story is about an individual whose life was nearly devastated by the economic shutdown of the pandemic.
We invite you to enjoy this beautiful story of impact. Spokane-based nonprofit Big Table received crucial support through a special fund Innovia launched to ignite generosity to support people in the restaurant and hotel industries.
8 months, I was sober, went right back to it. Went into another treatment center, it was 28 days. Then I started using again. Went into a program that was 6 months called the Cub House here in Spokane. It saved my life. I was introduced to Big Table by one of the managers there a year ago, August. I got very sick. I couldn't work. I maybe worked 5 days that month. And so they paid my rent that month. And then when COVID hit, they paid my rent again.
Big Table exists to care for those in crisis in the restaurant and hospitality industry. It's the largest industry in the country, highest concentration of need. And they have smiles on their faces. When we walk in the door, they're greeting us and asking us how we're doing. But hidden behind those smiles is this incredible concentration of need.
That addiction is hidden. That struggle to find daycare, that abusive relationship or broken relationship is all had to be left at the door because the smile has covered it all.
I went into work one day, it was in March, and they said we're shutting down. I was out of work for almost 2 months. I didn't get my stimulus, and I didn't get my unemployment.
Since Big Table's been in existence for 10 years, we had a good sense of the layout of the industry and the need that was there already. What COVID did was it just peeled back the curtain for much of the rest of the country to see what an incredible long-term crisis there has been here that has been hidden behind those smiles.
Overnight, it was like waves of referrals every day. Now we got to find funds. We got to find support for this.
We already knew how to care for folks. We had the systems in place to get care to them quickly. What hit for us, though, was we were overwhelmed. We blew through $45,000 in crisis aid in 3 days. It just felt natural then to reach out to Innovia because the relationship was already in place.
We're looking at care needs, we're looking at situations and saying, okay, how do we respond to this? How do we meet this? A lot of the dollars that came from Innovia enabled that response, enabled that care to happen.
What we focused on was triage care, and the triage care we decided to do was food security. The other piece would be housing security.
The generous backers and supporters that have said that some we haven't even ever met before and are saying, we believe in your mission. Wow, it's just wild.
They will do anything to help you because they sure have helped me. I would wake up in the morning with a fifth of vodka under my pillow. And now today I have 2 bank accounts. They both have money. Never had that before either.
This is their job to take care of you. What can we do to turn around and just take care of them back?
What a powerful story. A big thank you to Brandon for having the courage to share his story with all of us. We would also like to invite you to visit our website at innovia.org, where you'll find more stories of impact which we were unable to share due to our limited time together today.
At Innovia Foundation, we believe people's lives are positively transformed because of the passion and generosity of each of you. Your commitment to live, serve, and lead with generosity is why Innovia has and will continue to live into its vision to create vibrant and sustainable communities where every person has the opportunity to thrive.
What a year we have been through. But your community foundation is here forever. Whether we are living through a global pandemic, wildfires, or when life finally comes back to normal like we know it will, your community foundation is helping generous donors impact lives and communities every day for generations to come.
This is why we do what we do. And this is why we are hopeful, optimistic, and so grateful for each of you. Thank you for joining us today. May you continue to recognize and celebrate the impact of generosity all around you. As we close out our event, we want to end the way we started, with the beauty of music to inspire us. Our region has been home to so many incredibly talented artists, and today we are joined by local entrepreneur, thought leader, and singer-songwriter Carly Ingersoll. Carly has written a song exclusively for Innovia's annual reception, and we are honored to have her debut it in studio for you today.
Accompanied by Scott Ryan, and here to perform her original composition entitled This Is Why, please welcome Carly Ingersoll.
She didn't have much, just some inspiration, enough to give something back. Now a million lives and generations, young minds now back on track. Some have lost their homes, no food on the table at the end of their road. It's the hardest year anyone can remember, but we aren't left without hope. This is why we can stand right here. We can give so much to a world full of fear. There is someone who isn't out of hope. We can make it through the lowest of the lows. More and more things can seem fractured, remnants of a vibrant past. But I need you now to stand for your neighbor. We can make change that lasts. Turn on the light, there's nowhere fear can hide, and I'm here for you now. So much at stake, so many feel like they could break, and I'm here for you now. This is why we can stand right here.
Sorry, I messed up.
Aw, thank you.
Here we go.
Where's my assistants that are supposed to come around me and fluff my hair? Where's Sean? Okay.
Like, well, what do I need to say?
Riff and take
Woo!
it, capture it all.
Capture it all. Capture it all.
Perfect. Do we have a short one?
I'm done? Oh, yay, good.
Thank you so much. And cut.